You need to be a fairly adventurous type of person to get into it.
I go up to the gym a lot, and then I figured I'd try this because I wanted to see and test my abilities.
The fact that it's a self-refereed sport means that you're accountable for your own actions.
Australian sport is changing, quick. With the Olympics just around the corner and a pandemic right behind us, Aussies have got more games to choose from than ever before, and a new generation that's coming up to make that choice of game for the first time. So, how well do the World Games match up with what we're actually playing, or even what we were playing a few years ago? This Ballarat climbing gym opened just 2 years ago, not long after the sport made its own Olympic debut in Tokyo.
In gym, sometimes you feel a bit judged. You feel like there's a bit of a pecking order, I seem. Like, there's always sort of someone who's been there a bit longer, more experienced, lifts heavier. You feel like there's less people to fit in with and talk to when you're in a gym environment.
You could almost say the same thing here. Like, there's always going to be someone who's a better climber than you. Why do you think you get a different feeling, like, participating here?
I think the climbing is a technique. I think a lot of people bring different tools and tricks to the trade in a way. So it's not exactly a competition. It's how can I show my knowledge and share my experience to someone who's just beginning. It's more of a novice to an expert, not so much that you're better in any way.
Do you feel like encouraged by seeing things like climbing make an appearance at the Olympics, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it needs to be some more variety in the Olympics. I think it's moving away from just your generic sports. A bit more sense of diversity in general.
Climbers used to have to go hunting for real mountains to get their fix. But now, thanks to an Oscar-winning documentary, a new Olympic event, and a proliferation of accessible gyms, everything's changed.
There's definitely a noticeable uptick in interest and participation once the Olympics sort of came through and people saw it on their TVs. So now that it is here, it's really good to see a lot of people have been like, oh, that looks really cool, I want to come in and give it a go. Come on.
With a cooperative atmosphere you can embrace on your own schedule, it's not hard to see why climbing's getting a hold in Australia. But by themselves, those ingredients aren't quite enough. On this farm in northwest Victoria, 43 hang glider pilots are preparing for takeoff. And having a look around, it's pretty clear from the demographics, these aren't the same people at Jason's gym.
We did have huge numbers. Back in the 70s, we had 500 pilots in Victoria. I was printing a newsletter. And then we did have some accidents which dropped the numbers down because people then realised, wow, okay, this is serious stuff, maybe not. And then it's built up, but it's dropped off with all those things that people want to do.
Peter started hang gliding when he was just 18 years old, and 50 years later, he's still at it. That puts him not far off the average age around here.
If you pick up a book on extreme sports, you will not find hang gliding. You used to, not now. There's skateboarding, obviously the rock climbing. Rock climbing is, I've got a good friend who does both hang gliding and rock climbing. It's safe, it's really good. In many ways, much more under control than what's here.
To see if what Peter was saying about getting into hang gliding is true, I went looking for someone a bit younger. Eventually, I found more than one.
My son's in the car just behind us. He's 7 weeks old. I didn't know if I was going to make it out to this competition because obviously, I'm still pretty fresh, but I've got a really supportive partner, Angus, over there, so he'll look after the baby while I go flying.
Nicole's day job is flying for the Australian Air Force, so when she tells me that she still needed to spend $3,000 on flying lessons and another $7,500 on a second-hand glider, I started to understand what kind of obstacles are keeping young people from hang gliding. But as for what convinced her to drive 500 k's to be here on the weekend, I think it might have something to do with the view.
It's just a really different type of flying. There's a lot more, I guess, reading the air and I just really enjoy it. It's not a job at all. You're up there lying prone. To me, it's the closest thing to being a bird. Just the freedom that you feel up there. You get, amazing views of everywhere around you and you're just sort of feeling the air.
For better or worse, more sports to choose from means the most expensive and hard to learn ones like hang gliding are going to struggle to stand out. But even a bit closer to home, a lot of sports that you might know a lot better are battling too.
What we've seen is post-COVID, the overall number of Victorians playing sport is actually higher now than what it was pre-COVID. But what we're seeing is, for the first time, a real decline in primary school age children. So those sort of 6 to 9 year olds that would normally enter Auskick Funnet and get those foundation skills before they sort of play competition, sort of 8 to 10 year olds. They also didn't have school where they could pick up foundation skills through PE. If they can't catch and throw and have confidence now as a 10, 11 year old, we're really concerned that how do they enter sport now, because they can't just rock up to a club and play competition if they don't have the skills and competence.
Since 2015, sports scientist Rochelle Imey has been studying sport participation in Victoria in a lot of detail, and her numbers show that while adults kept pretty active during the pandemic, kids' participation took a massive hit. And while regional and metropolitan kids usually had a long-established, healthy club to go back to get them back into their game of choice, it was the kids in the growth suburbs without those clubs that were hardest hit.
A lot of times there's no real community there yet. Like if you go buy a block and I go buy a block, we don't necessarily know each other yet. So it takes a while to build that community. You need people to have bought the land to build the house before they then can pay rates to build the courts and the ovals.
In fact, a lot of clubs have been struggling, and it started a long time before the pandemic. For decades, it's been solo, accessible activities that have thrived in Australia, while the most resource-intensive club sports have struggled to hang on to their members. So what's an Aussie to do without a club, a gym, or referees to get the game going? Well, one team sport that's bucked the trend might have an answer.
The fact that it's a self-refereed sport means that you're accountable for your own actions. So if I had the disc and somebody came and knocked it out of my hands, I'd be able to say foul, and then they'd have the opportunity to say I agree or I disagree, and we'd have a discussion about it, and depending on the outcome is where the disc would come back in, and then we play on. So it keeps everybody really accountable and safe as well.
With no referees, no expensive gear, and no infrastructure to speak of, the Ballarat Ultimate Frisbee Club has joined over 60,000 Aussies playing disc sports. That number has more than doubled in just 5 years, and Leah reckons the inclusive culture and accessibility of the game explains why.
In Ballarat, we're really lucky to be able to offer this diverse sport to people who haven't really found their home in other team sports before. So to be able to rock up, not be expected to know the rules, and meet a lovely bunch of individuals who are really humble, it makes them really feel at home and keen to stick around.
What's really been fantastic is the choice of sports and activities that resonate with our children and youth, because that is the next generation, and they're the ones that are going to be connected through the social media feeds of these people, not necessarily always watching on traditional TV like older generations, but also to if we can have some true legacy events that, you know, in line and pre and post games, where you have maybe down at the local skate park or BMX track, you have some come and try stuff, and if people get excited about watching it and want to go try it, there's an opportunity for them to go do so.